Hey guys, happy new year and welcome back to another video. I know it is the end of January, but I've not uploaded this month, so happy new year. Today I am taking on a challenge that many have also been looking at over the last few weeks, months. It's definitely been months at this point. That challenge is to complete the Pokemon Home Dexes for each mainline Pokemon game. This is due to the Shiny Meloetta event and the text in that event stating that this is the first Shiny Mythical event. They then outright state that more of these events are on the way. So over the next few weeks I planned on completing the Sword and Shield Dexes. But without further ado, let's see what we are starting with. Sword and Shield are probably the biggest challenge for this mini-series, and so it made sense to take them on first. We have the Galar Dex, Isle of Armor Dex, and the Crown Tundra Dex. Much like Scarlet and Violet, which had the main game and both DLC Dexes to do, we're gonna have to do it again. But the current standings for this Dex is on screen now. We have the Galar Dex at 262 out of 400, the Isle of Armor Dex at 87 out of 210, and the Crown Tundra Dex at 115 out of 210 also, so both DLCs are the same. This means we have 356 spaces to fill. But I have a tip for anyone taking on this challenge, one that makes this process way easier. See, when Sword and Shield originally came out back in 2019, there was no home connectivity, meaning if you wanted to complete your dex, you needed to catch all 400 Pokemon in your native copy of the game. This means inside your original save file, you may have a massive collection of Pokemon that need to still be registered in home. So by moving all of the full boxes of random hodgepodge Pokemon back into Pokemon Home, and then, back into the game, I don't want a load of random Pokemon clogging up my pristine Pokemon Home, you will notice a massive difference in the amount of Pokemon registered. Our totals before catching a single Pokemon, or even booting up the game, now stands at the Galar Dex at 308 out of 400, the Isle of Armor Dex at 132 out of 210, and the Crown Tundra Dex at 150 out of 210. So with 230 spaces now remaining, however, they aren't all individual Pokemon. Let me explain. In the Galar Dex, we have Espeon missing, the only evolution I'm missing. And if you look at the Crown Tundra Dex, we also have Espeon missing. So when I fill out the main dex, the DLC dexes will also become more complete. So it makes sense to start with the base game. I have played a total of 424 hours and 39 minutes of Pokemon Shield and 62 hours and 15 minutes of Pokemon Sword for my main save files. It's on these files that I'm going to be catching today, so let's see how long this challenge actually takes me with in-game time. So I was about to try and speed through this challenge. In dex order, I caught Caterpie, Metapod, 2 Grubbin, 2 Pidove, Purloin, Minccino, Bounsweet, 2 Oddish, Growlithe, 2 Vanillite, Delibird, 2 Dwebble, Golett, 2 Munna, Xatu, Stuffle, Krabby, 2 Tyrogue, a Pancham, Clank, 2 Timple, a Machoke, Remoraid, Shelder, Feebas, Diglett, Drillbur, Roggenrola, Boldore, Girder, Woobat, Noibat, Onyx, 2 Cutiefly, 2 Ferroseed, Espeon, Dewpider, Lantern, Wimpod, Salandit, Pawniard, Throw, Clefairy, Togepi, Munchlax, Cottony, 2 Rhyhorn, 3 Gothita, 2 Solosis, Carablast, Shelmet, Elgium, 2 Cubchoo, 2 Rufflet, Mandibuzz, Litwick, Inkay, Riolu, Frillish, Toxapex, Flygon, 2 Axew, Morlul, Shiinotic, Oranguru, Togedemaru, Mantine, Delmise, Zweilous, and Como. That was a lot of catching, and we weren't over there. I then evolved Grubbin to Chargerbug, Pidove to Tranquil, Oddish to Gloom, Vanillite to Vanilluxe, Dwebble to Crustle, Munna to Musharna, Tyrogue to Hitmonlee, Tyrogue to Hitmonchan, Stuffle to Beware, Timple to Palpitoad, Woobat to Swoobat, Cutiefly to Rabombi, Ferroseed to Ferrothorn, Rhyhorn to Rhydon, 2 Gothita to Gothorita, and 1 Gothorita to Gothitelle, Solosis to Duosion, Cubchoo to Bertic, Rufflet to Braviary, Inkay to Malamar through upside down weirdness, and Axew to Fracture. But we're not done there. I then also hatched Clink from Clank and Machop from Machoke, because I just couldn't be bothered going and catching one. And finally, after all that, I still had one left to get, so I traded a Vanillite I had already caught for a sock in the Ice Town. Can't remember the name of it. But yeah, sock. Done. After all that catching, hatching, and evolutions, it was time to check in with our home progress. After dumping all these Pokemon into Pokemon Home, and then swiftly dragging them back into Shield, we have fully completed the base game dex, with it being at 400 out of 400. Our updated totals for the DLC dexes were also Isle of Armor at 157 out of 210, and the Crown Tundra at a staggering 177 out of 210. Massive progress after just completing the main game's dex. But, you know, this challenge isn't complete 1 out of 3 dexes in a game, this is complete all 3. So, into the Isle of Armor we went. And in dex order, I caught Happiny, Chansey, Jigglypuff, 2 Fomantis, 2 Fletchling, 2 Shinx, 2 Abra, Tentacle, Bouffalante, Lickitung, 2 Venipede, Fungus, Tangela, Zorua, Staryu, Magnemite, Magneton, Carvanha, Lillipup, Herdier, Stoutland, Tauros, Scyther, Pinsir, Heracross, Sandygast, Azurill, 2 Poliwag, Psyduck, Loudred, Rockruff, Mienfoo, Sandshrew, Cubone, 2 Sandile, Larvesta, Sprout, Clauncher, Horsea, Kingdra, Petalil, Lilligant, and Execute. After all that catching, I decided to do hatching first instead of evolutions. I then hatched a single Igglybuff, as can't be found in the wild, and then I proceeded to evolve Fomantis to Lurantis, Fletchling to Fletchinder, Shinx to Luxio, Abra to Kadabra, Venipede to Whirlipede, Poliwag to Poliwhirl, Sandile to Krokorok, a Porygon to Porygon 2, and then finally, a Porygon 2 to Porygon Z. After round 2 of catching, hatching, and evolutions, it was time to check in with our home progress once again. And after dumping all those Pokemon into home, and then dragging them back, we have fully completed the Isle of Armor dex at 210 out of 210. And honestly, I didn't realize how long this challenge was going to take. I was like, this will be like an afternoon. This was like day 4 of this challenge at this point. Actually, it was probably like week 2 of the challenge at this point. I still Crown Tundra to do. But anyway, enough whinging. Our updated totals for Sword and Shield are therefore the base game total at 400 out of 400, already complete. The Isle of Armor dex at 210 out of 210, now complete. And with our final dex, Crown Tundra is still at 177. So there's no feed through from the Isle of Armor to the Crown Tundra, at least the ones I had left didn't feed through. So, for one final time this episode, let's go catching in the Crown Tundra. Thank God the legendaries aren't included in this dex, otherwise this video wouldn't be coming out until at least March. In Crown Tundra dex order, I caught Smoochum, Jinx, Elekid, Electabuzz, Magby, Magmar, Swablu, Nidoran female, Nidorino female, 2 Nidoran male, 3 Bagon, 2 Gibble, 2 Almanite, a Kabuto, Carbink, Beldum, Metang, 2 Zubat, Tortuga, Archon, Spheal, Celio, Anorith, Aaron, Lairon, and 2 Dratini, marking the end for catching in this challenge. And then, for the final time, I evolved some Pokemon. I evolved Nidoran male to Nidorino male, Bagon to Shelgon, Shelgon to Salamence, Gibble to Gabite, Almanite to Omastar, Zubat to Golbat, and ended with Dratini to Dragonair. It should be noted that sometimes I evolved multiple Pokemon to get multiple evolution lines. I may have missed out where I evolved 2 things to 2 things, but you're going to see the dexes. There's no way for me to cheat doing this. So anyway, if you're keeping track, that was 33 new dex entries, which means we have fully completed the Crown Tundra, with it finally being at 210 out of 210. Our updated totals for Sword and Shield therefore are base game 400 out of 400, Isle of Armor 210 out of 210, Crown Tundra 210 out of 210. And when we open up the app, we can see that we have the crowns listed next to each of these dexes. A great sight. But the end of the challenge signaled the end of the time constraints. 7 hours and 20 minutes of shield time and 50 minutes of sword time. Now that doesn't sound like a whole lot, except that's only the in-game time. This challenge took a lot of planning, a lot of pausing, and I had to map out a lot of routes. So all in all, this, I would have said this was easily over 10 hours. So Shield ended with a time of 431 hours and 59 minutes, and Sword ended with a time of 62 hours and 55 minutes. In total, 8 hours and 10 minutes for this entire challenge, which actually wasn't too bad considering I had a good 200 odd Pokemon to find, evolve, and hatch. So what do we get for all that hard work for that 8 hours? Well, for Scarlet and Violet you get Shiny Mythical Meloetta, and for Sword and Shield we get nothing. Literally nothing. That's right, we get absolutely nothing for completing this challenge. However, based on the event description for Shiny Meloetta, there's a chance they do more Dex completion events in the future. Maybe for past games, although I'm kind of thinking it's going to be geared towards future games, but always good to have your bets covered. So maybe we will get our hands on a shiny Genesect, or a shiny Volcanion. The world is our Omanyte. I for one am going to make sure I complete all of my home dexes for each individual game up to at least the crowned completion level, just to be safe. Let me know if you're going to take on this challenge too, and what game you're thinking of. If you had a little peek at my BDSP, it's going to be a long day. But with Sword and Shield complete and out the way, I just want to thank you all for watching all the way to the end of this video. It helps me out a bunch, and if you've enjoyed, maybe consider dropping a like or subscribing for more. It really does help out the channel more than you know. Until next time though, I hope you all have an amazing day, and I'll see you all later. Bye!